All right, if you've got an exam on public health or disaster management coming up, you are in the right place. We're going to break down the official Malaysian framework, piece by piece, so you can absolutely ace that test. Let's dive right in.
So, let's kick things off with a fundamental question. When you think about disaster management, what comes to mind? Is it just flashing lights, sirens, emergency crews scrambling around? Is it all just a reaction to chaos?
Well, the answer, and this is the key concept you really need to grasp, is a big no. In Malaysia, public health disaster management is not a one-way street. It's a continuous, always moving cycle. The official plan, the Pelan Pengurusan Bencana, lays it out as a formal process with 4 distinct phases that are constantly feeding into each other.
So here's our game plan. We'll look at the big picture of the cycle first. Then we're going to drill down into each of the 4 pillars: mitigation, preparedness, response, and recovery. And finally, we'll see how it all ties together in what we call the resilient loop.
Okay, let's get into pillar number 1, mitigation, or mitigasi. This is the really strategic part. It's all about getting ahead of the curve and tackling the root causes that make us vulnerable in the first place, before a disaster even has a chance to happen.
And here's the thing you've got to remember. It has 2 jobs. The official definition makes this clear. First, you try to stop the disaster from ever occurring. But if you can't, the second job is to do everything in your power to lessen its punch. It's all about being proactive, because every single thing we do here can save lives and a whole lot of money later on. So how does this work in the real world of public health? Well, it pretty much boils down to 2 main approaches. You've got your structural measures. Think about physical stuff, things you can build. And then there are non-structural measures, things like new policies, laws, and public education campaigns.
And here's a perfect example of a structural measure. Remember the earthquake in Sabah back in 2015? Well, a key mitigation action after that was to physically reinforce hospitals in the Ranau area. That's engineering, plain and simple, designed to minimize damage from a disaster we know can happen there.
Okay, pay attention here, because this is a classic exam question where people get mixed up. Mitigation is all about prevention. It asks why something might happen and tries to fix it. Preparedness, which we're about to get to, is all about planning. It assumes the disaster is going to happen and asks, okay, are we ready for it?
Which brings us perfectly to our second pillar, preparedness, or kesiapsiagaan. So if we couldn't stop the disaster from happening, this is the phase where we make sure we have the skills, the plans, and the stuff we need to handle it. It's all about building our capacity to respond. This quote right here, it perfectly sums up the whole mindset. Just look at the wording. It's not if a disaster strikes, but when. That simple change forces you to be constantly ready. It's a powerful question. Are we ready for what we know is coming?
And yeah, the official definition backs us up completely. The key words are planning and preparatory steps taken early. This is not about scrambling at the last minute. It's about systematically getting everything in order way before the crisis hits.
So what does this actually look like? Well, it means creating super detailed action plans for all sorts of scenarios. It means making sure our national stockpiles of things like PPE and vaccines are always topped up. It means running drills and simulations. You might hear them called tabletop exercises, or TTX, to stress test our plans. And it means our district health offices are constantly updating their risk profiles so they know exactly who's most vulnerable in their area. And now we get to the part everyone pictures. Pillar 3, the response. The disaster is here. We are officially in the hot zone, where everything is happening fast and every single decision matters. What's absolutely critical here is how fast that formal command structure kicks into gear. As soon as a disaster is declared, these operations rooms, or bilik gerakan, light up at every single level of government, coordinating the entire effort from one central point.
So the response is all about being fast, but also being smart. Public health sends out these highly trained rapid response and rapid assessment teams. And they don't just show up to help, they're also collecting vital data, feeding it back to the operations rooms so the decision makers can send medicine, equipment, and people exactly where they are needed most. It's all driven by data.
Think about the annual northeast monsoon floods. That's a perfect, classic Malaysian example of this in action. Medical teams are sent straight to the evacuation centers, and they're not just there to patch up cuts, they're there to proactively stop outbreaks of waterborne diseases like cholera and leptospirosis, which can spread like wildfire in those conditions.
Okay, the immediate threat has passed, but we are not done. Not by a long shot. That brings us to our 4th and final pillar, recovery, or pemulihan.
This is the long haul, the tough process of helping an entire community get back on its feet.
But here's the key. The goal isn't just to patch things up and go back to how they were before. The modern approach, and a really important phrase to remember, is build back better. You use the recovery as a chance to fix the vulnerabilities you discovered, to make the community even stronger and more resilient than it was before.
And you can see how the official definition really covers all the bases. It's partly about the physical stuff, right? Repairing clinics, roads, and so on. But it's just as much about the human side, the rehabilitation of victims, helping them deal with the physical and psychological trauma.
And, we don't have to look far for a powerful recent example of this. A massive part of Malaysia's recovery from COVID-19 isn't just about the economy. It's the huge, long-term investment in mental health and psychosocial support services, MHPSS, to help everyone, including our frontline heroes, cope with the trauma of the pandemic.
All right, so we've walked through all 4 pillars. Now for the most important part, seeing how they're not separate boxes, but are all connected in one powerful, unbroken loop.
So look at this. This is the whole thing in one picture. You move from mitigation to preparedness into the hot zone of response and then the long haul of recovery. But look closely at that arrow looping from the bottom all the way back to the top. That's the secret sauce. The lessons you learn in recovery, that build back better idea, they feed directly into new, smarter mitigation strategies. And the cycle begins again, but this time you're stronger.
Seriously, if you remember just one thing from all of this for your exam, make it this. A great public health leader knows these aren't just 4 separate jobs. They see it for what it is, a single, continuous cycle that they have to manage all the time.
So, I'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. This framework is strong, but it can't stay the same forever. With new threats like climate change making weather more extreme, and with the constant risk of the next pandemic, the big question is, how does this cycle itself need to evolve so we can build a future that's truly resilient?